I guess having dealt with politicians of all ilks for many years, the one thing that's always surprised me is just how far removed from the real world they are. In general, they treat the public as mugs and treat people from outside their own party structures as suspicious. And I've always found that odd, as the biggest threat to most sitting politicians is those within their own party who are plotting to get their seat. Step into the rarefied air of a party function and you will see them disingenuously kissing and shaking hands with people they know are plotting against them personally or plotting against people in their own faction. It's actually a full-time job to keep the meal down watching it. There is no better example of just how they tend to ignore the public than the current leadership of both major parties federally. You have the massively unpopular Tony Abbott leading the Libs, and each and every poll going back for 5 years shows that the public would prefer Malcolm Turnbull as the party's leader. Similarly with the ALP, you have that shocker Bill Shorten in control, yet the rank and file and all public polls show that they would have preferred Anthony Albanese. But no, both parties in a sanctum decided up the public's arse, we know better. In fact, the dunces in the Liberal Party who elected Abbott almost certainly cost themselves an extra term in government, as had Turnbull led the Liberals to the 2007 poll, I believe there would have been no hung parliament because they would have won the election. Shows just how smart they are, not. I'm also tired of continually hearing all this crap about the supposed left-wing bias on the ABC. There is bias in all sections of the media from certain commentators one way or another. I'm a subscriber to the Daily Telegraph, which lobs on my lawn 7 times a week at Sparrow Fart. Some of the most unhinged right-wing sermons are contained in the paper. Miranda Devine, Piers Ackerman and Andrew Bolt, pardon me, all write ideological diatribes for the paper. And I suppose I simply choose not to read them. Similarly, I do not read the column that dimwit Paul Howes writes in the Sunday Telegraph either, as none of what any of the 4 writes passes as news or unbiased commentary to me. Sky News can get nauseating with predictable commentary from ALP stalwarts like Bruce Hawker, Troy Bramston, John McTiernan and Stephen Loosely, or equally predictable dribble from Chris Kinney, Helen Coonan, Paul Murray, Amanda Vanstone or Graham Morris, among others, on the Conservative side of the fence. None of them are objective. They're ideologues rusted onto their side of politics and unable to see a balance in things through their rusted-on brain. So if the ABC appears to be delivering the messages of the left, there is a lot putting forward the right's view as well to balance it out in the media landscape. Oh dear. Corey Bernardi has copped plenty of flack over his new book, The Conservative Revolution. While there is nothing much that the Federal Liberal Party's resident dropkick says that I agree with, I do believe that he's entitled to his view, and I'm sick of the limp-wristed hand-wringing from the left that suggests otherwise. I, for one, will not be rushing to Dimmicks to buy a copy, nor would I want one if someone gave it to me. But nonetheless, the waste of space in the Senate is entitled to pen a book on his thoughts as anyone else is. The only thing about the whole thing that confuses me is that there is no conservative revolution taking place in Australia. Sure, we may have conservative governments in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and WA and federally, but I can assure you that the average Australian is not an extremist, and if they lurch too far to the right, they will be booted. There is a benefit, however, to Bernardi's book. His continual espousal of unhinged ideas makes it almost impossible for any leader, present or future, to return him to any cabinet position, and that can only be a good thing. John Howard is a prime example of how we are not a bunch of unthinking ideological nongs. Work Choices was a step too far to the right for the Australian public, and from the minute Howard introduced it, he was gone, and the punters waited with baseball bats to get him. So, Senator Bernardi, there is very little chance of lunatic extreme right-wing sets of policies being introduced by any Conservative government for longer than one term. End result, no conservative revolution, and certainly not as you envisage it should be. A classic example of how politicians can just barefaced lie without any compunction was clearly demonstrated by federal Liberal MP Alex Hawke, who was on one of those Sky News programs late last year with Labor counterpart Ed Husick. Hawke caused great mirth among the panel when he blatantly said there are no factions in the Liberal Party. Bloody liar. He heads one up. He learnt the art of factional warfare when he was a staffer for the New South Wales Parliament's resident right-wing nutter David Clark, and since splitting with his former ally to enhance his own power base within the party, Mr Hawke and his band of merry factionalists have been involved in some wonderful pre-selection imbroglios. In fact, the Liberal Party in New South Wales has three distinct factions: the hard right, the centre right and the moderates, making it even more factionally driven and divided than the ALP. My message to Mr Hawke is simple. We don't mind you pulling your own pud, but don't pull ours. If there's one thing I've enjoyed over this parliamentary and political hiatus over the holiday season, it's no Tanya Plibersek on the TV screen. I used to think Plibersek was pretty good value, but towards the end of last year, her carping on the Indonesian issue, her smarminess and perverse attitude in interviews was giving me flashbacks. I was getting reminded of that horror Sophie Mirabella, who thankfully lost Indi at the federal election. She thought she was too smart by half and exuded smarminess and a schoolmarmish attitude when being interviewed. Not a good look to be reminding people of Sophie, Tanya. I was gobsmacked that all the media is complaining that the New South Wales O'Farrell government for its torpor since coming to power. I simply want to know, why are they surprised? The Libs in New South Wales prior to the last election were professional losers. They got flogged election after election by an inept, spin-driven and New South Wales ALP that has been proven to be riddled with corruption. The only effective opposition when the Libs were supposed to be the opposition was the media. I had several Liberal MPs complain to me that they could not get traction on issues. Sure, the ALP was spinning like mad, but I'm sure that if the Libs had something intelligent or visionary to say in opposition, they would have got coverage, as the people of New South Wales were well and truly over the horrid ALP governments here long before they voted them out. The ALP rorted itself out of office in New South Wales, and that is why the government changed, not because the public was excited or anticipating great things under an O'Farrell government. The nexus of this government have spent their entire political lives in opposition, faced many elections and ran distant seconds on many occasions. It's impossible to imagine that they can lose the next election. They can't, particularly as the remnants of the Obeid and McDonald clans still infest the New South Wales ALP. But to suddenly expect that a baton change was going to see inveterate losers turn into a can-do government, that was just a little bit rich.